I'm a serial founder, founded 7 companies, my own, started already at school. After a while, I turned angel investor, got in contact with other investors, did some angel syndicates, went into VC world. Finally, started with the first European VC that went on the stock market. We changed a lot of things back in the 80s and 90s in the work of VCs. All things you know today, like incubators, accelerators, all that didn't exist at that time. And we didn't name it like that, but we did something like that. So we were able to leverage the success of early stage startups. And yeah, I've been on that journey for a long time, till today. And later on, I also started to work with corporates, doing corporate innovation programs, getting startups together with corporates, not for investing, but to do innovative projects together. And yeah, everything with background of sustainability and impact. I'm trying to find startups that can make our world, our lives better. And yeah, one of the related topics, of course, is AgeTech.
Yeah, it was an amazing introduction. So, like, kind of, I've been in this industry for 100 years.
Okay, bit silver, but not 100 years.
So it's kind of like, well, it's very, really, really related to AgeTech. Elena?
Yes. So I'm with Flint Capital. It's an early stage VC. We're based in Boston. So I worked for large corporations and startups in Europe, US, Israel, a little bit all over the world. So currently we invest in early stage companies in digital health, health tech, age tech as well, but also cybersecurity, enterprise software. So we do seed rounds and Series A rounds, and I'm actively looking at generally at health tech space.
Well, yeah, what you in the United States, what you call seed rounds, here we call it A rounds.
Well, yeah, you know what? Generally, that's so true. The seed rounds is not what it used to be 10 years ago. Even when the company could get the money because they had a great idea. You know, like it's generally not happening anymore. It's not what we see. So, yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, and Suzanne, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, amazing. Finally, great. So could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I run an AgeTech startup called Nestful. We help people seeking affordable accommodation to co-live with people that are generally age 50 and over. And I run alongside that a not-for-profit called Startup School for Seniors, which helps people over 50 to take the first steps to starting their own business.
Yeah, the second initiative is amazing. Basically, I recently read some article, like you're based in UK, so I read some article about UK that's over 50% of people who are retiring are aiming to start their own businesses.
Yeah, I mean, that may be true, but equally, most of the work that we do is aimed at post-COVID recovery, people who are struggling to find a job. There's a huge result of COVID. So people 18 to 25-year-old are most likely to struggle to get back into work. And similarly, people 50 and over, the 25 to 49-year-olds are, it's looking pretty good for them, but not so great at either end. So really, we're aiming to support those people who are currently unemployed or are at most risk of being redundant. The to point out the big success stories, people that have had corporate careers and are going and starting their own businesses and creating, fast scaling businesses. But my experience is much more at this stage where people are struggling just to get work and considering self-employment as an option in light of nothing else being available to them.
Yeah, basically that's a very interesting topic in terms of AgeTech. So when you're like 55, you're out of the job market completely. So there are no tools basically for you to get like any sort of new job. There are no tools for you to get any sort of new education and start your life, like start your second part of life, let's say like this. And when we are looking at the American market, we see a lot of digital products for senior citizens. But when we are looking at the EU market, we see almost kind of none. It's kind of like a desert. And it's not because senior citizens, I mean, when you're launching a startup and when you're everyone is looking at this audience like from 25 to 45, because everyone is considering this audience being an economic power and people who are paying actually for things. But the survey that was recently conducted in the European Union says that we have EU and UK together has 150 million of senior citizens, 50%, up to 50% of them, depending on the country, are digitally excluded. And for example, in UK, if those people were digitally included, the GDP of UK would be 2% higher. So yeah, so basically, Suzanne, you're doing something, you know, to kind of raise the GDP of UK. And I have first question to Elena. Tell us, like, I mean, I know that you says like probably 5 to 10 years ahead of us. So what's the situation with the AgeTech in the USA, best practices?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, it's generally there is, of course, a trend that people want to age at home, and I think that this trend will only strengthen after COVID, so there is a huge demand for various solutions, and there are a lot of solutions available actually. But what we see is that the solutions are like separate. You know, okay, there are a lot of variables, and how many variables can you wear? You know, and then there are a lot of solutions. Like there is a solutions like if you leave a door open, if you leave a stove on, and so a lot of sensors, and it's actually quite overwhelming. So this is what we see. I think there will be there is a demand for one like converged smartphone, smart home solution that is not there yet. And another problem is that I was back in the US. I was the main caretaker of my grandmother for a while, and I saw how disconnected this world is like from like people who are aging from all this high tech that is happening elsewhere. You know, like people are totally not aware what is available, where to get it. You know, what are the best solutions out there? So that was definitely the source of my my own frustration and a problem, a huge problem that's needed to be solved. Needs to be solved.
Yeah, so basically Europe is not that far behind as we thought.
No, I wouldn't say so. Look, it's really, you know, like families are constantly looking for available solutions that would make it easier for them to take care of their aging family members.
But again, you're saying care, right? So basically, we are talking about some solutions to help people who are kind of helpless in some situations. And when we are talking AgeTech is much wider. For example, yes. We recently had this conversation with Suzanne about like dating. And yeah, that's I think Suzanne, that's the best story, like you being a veteran of the dating websites and everything. So basically dating, traveling, jobs, careers, education and everything. And when you look at all of this, you don't see the products. I mean, when you're 65 to 70, your dating needs would be different from what we have on Tinder, for example, or something else, because it's more about companionship. So, like, I mean, Frank, what do you think? Why no one actually sees that there are people, who are an economic power and who want to be kind of included as we all are.
Yeah, the problem to me is Silver or AgeTech is not really an industry, and the target group is not one big common group. They're different groups, and this should be part of the marketing of each company. And I think that's why the US is a bit ahead of us, because Americans are much stronger in marketing than the Europeans. If you see working with CRM systems and stuff like that, and building processes, funnels and stuff, that's typical American. And Americans define their target groups. I always say that's coming already to the babies. While in Europe, it's really different. So people are not really defining their target groups. They're just doing a kind of try and error on the market. And if you don't have a closer look, you just oversee those people. And as you said in the beginning, most of the startups that are offering new services or new products, these are usually young people. They're surrounded by young people. They're inspired by young people. So the start of the product or the service is influenced by all that. I also see a lot of discussions about diversity and things like that, where people say, well, this was not designed for colored people, or this was not for women, or whatever. The problem usually is that the founders are not in close contact with their target group, with their customer. So they're designing it by the things they know. And that's a typical problem for AgeTech and SilverTech. Yeah. And we're starting now to see there's a growing target group, especially in Europe or in Japan. If you look at those countries, and even in China, it's starting. Society is getting older. So we're realizing there's a huge target group with a lot of money to spend. And there's now more attention paid to that. And I don't really think we have a total lack of products or services. There are lots of companies that have these things, but they need to adapt it to that target group. Some slightly changes, more explanation, marketplaces where you can find the things. Yeah, often it's the things are there, but you don't know that they're. Yeah, for many other things, especially for the younger generations, there are lots of common platforms. Everybody knows, everybody looks there and finds the things there, and that's still not there for the elder generations.
Yeah, but I think it's not just about interfaces, it's about how the world basically is built. I mean, fintech or insurtech, like if you're 65, try going to the bank and taking a loan for buying a car or whatever, like, or getting a normal insurance or something like this. I mean, you're coming to the bank and you have an amazing career and you're earning money and you're doing stuff, and they're looking at your papers and they're telling you you're 65. Like, go away. You can't be here because from our point of view, you should kind of, crawl slowly in the direction of the cemetery, and you're not going to live another 20 years. So we are not giving you any loan or something like this. So basically, probably if we need to build the products for the more mature audience, we need more mature founders to do this. Suzanne, you had this experience talking to the younger founders in SilverTech who said, like, we're going to take care of you or something like this. And I know that you have an opinion about SilverTech products.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Frank makes a really good point about the fact that there's a lot of products already out there that just aren't being marketed to all. There's no shortage of products and services. I do think that one of the things I hear, and I know firsthand, is that the older market is very fragmented in terms of both access to, just to the internet. And so market is challenging. And I know that because it's one of the first questions that I get asked by investors. You know, how are you going to reach these people? What are your routes to market? And they're not that clear, if I'm really honest. I mean, you know, some people are still consuming traditional media in terms of newspapers and magazines. Some people are looking at things online. My partner is completely disengaged from social media and only listens to BBC radio. And basically that's his sole source of information. He doesn't do anything else, and he doesn't read anything else. I mean, I just look at him and I think, how would I reach him? If I didn't know him, how would I reach him? He's impossible. You know, I have to advertise on Radio 4, which is impossible because of course you can't advertise on the BBC. You know, so it is really challenging when you think about this huge age group that we talk of as AgeTech, which also is ridiculous because let's face it, we're talking about 50 years of life here and we're reducing it down to one single sector. It's crazy. But it, you know, it is a challenging, complex, fragmented market, and I can totally appreciate being in it, why so many out of it.
Yeah,
huge but complex is the answer.
When we are looking at the market of startups, I mean, in terms of deals and everything, we see some like investments in the UK, we see some rare investments in the EU, and we see like a lot of investments going to the AgeTech startups at the USA market for sure. For example, this this Uber for senior citizens, which was called Great Call, was purchased by Best Buy for 800 million. And basically what they did, and they're still alive, operating, they built an Uber-like platform where you do everything as an Uber, but with a call phone, or with a phone call.
Yeah.
So they figured that senior citizens, like they are not kind of used to this geolocation stuff and everything. And but they're used to calling the taxi, because like literally calling the taxi, they did it like for years. So they built a platform, Uber-like platform for calling the taxi, and wow, they're sent by almost 1 billion. Another one, another startup with like this huge valuation is this product with the pills. So company was recently acquired by Amazon for 1 billion. So what they actually do, they assemble all your medication, they put them in different kind of packages. So this is the medication for Monday, this is the medication for Tuesday, this is the medication for Wednesday, like putting them all together and sending them to you. So you would avoid errors and everything. And I mean, these are simple ideas, right? We're not talking about some sort of technological miracle in silver tech or something. I mean, this is things that are solving like everyday life problems, but they're out there with like huge valuations, and basically this is some sort of indication of the market that's even the simple products are like flying over there. So the question is, how do you see the like the perspective that the AgeTech industry is going to be something like very separate industry with their own products, with their own unicorns, or would it be just the products that already exist in the market that would be adapted for this newer generation? Elena?
So I think it's going to be both, honestly. Like you had a great example of the first company, like with the phone calls. So there is generally this voice first products being developed, and voice first interfaces are the most intuitive way to overcome like touch screen and typing interface barriers. So, and I think that this will be particularly, just targeting aging population. So I think we can expect there to see like mainstream personal assistants will become more senior friendly and integrated with smart home environment tailored for senior citizens. And there is a lot of work being done in that space. For example, there are a lot of startups that help senior citizens that have had a stroke, and like with speech impairment and so on. So there is a lot of work being done there. On the other hand, so there are also general solutions like patient remote monitoring that's targeting not only the aging population, but it's just targeting people with chronic conditions and so on. And this needs to be further adopted and target further target aging population as well. So I think we'll see both to answer your question.
Mm-hmm. Frank, what do you think?
To me, AgeTech is not really an industry. It's too diverse for that. We will always have some groups that call it AgeTech or SilverTech, but to me, it's really more a market, and maybe some specialists that will help other companies to adapt to that market. So more interface to a special marketing target group. I don't think we will really have the AgeTech or SilverTech industry. It's if you look at people with 60 or 70 or 80, it's such a huge difference, and it's about so many different topics. So I wouldn't call that an industry itself.
Mm-hmm. And Suzanne, as a representative of this AgeTech, SilverTech economy, as a startup.
Well, I hope it's a sector. Otherwise, I'm a bit screwed, really. No, I mean, I think it's part of it is part of the ecosystem, but I take on board the fact that most of the businesses that are receiving funding tend to be aimed at later life. And, going back to what I said before, it's clear that if you're people and they're all in care homes, well, that's a lot easier than marketing to a group that's not, and is potentially very diverse. So I think that if anything, the AgeTech market seems to be focused and probably will continue to be focused on later life, end of life, where we're creating gadgets and appliances and things for people in care homes to stop them from falling, to stop VCs from having to visit their grandma in the home so they can just take a little box actor that way. So yeah, I think that that's pretty much where it seems to be going. There doesn't seem to be a lot of stuff for the boomers. But having said that, what I know from startup school, because we are a not-for-profit and we do government where we get most of our contracts, and in fact have a meeting in 2 hours about a contract starting next week, is that there is significant pots of money within local government to tackle specific issues, especially around work, housing, very specific sectors, which have always been there and are now looking at the very specific requirements that are coming out of COVID, as an example, especially around things like employability. So there is money, but it's the money that's always been there. It's just being ignited or reallocated into this older space because of the aging society and aging workforce and a whole bunch of things that's happening societally. But I don't see VC investment really following on from that. I see them as two very different and separate requirements. One is I want a fast scaling 200 million plus business. And the other is I just want you to solve the problems that are happening right now. And that's where the money that I'm getting from local government is being allocated.
Yeah, basically that's a good point. That's very interesting point. It's not only about AgeTech. It's a little bit about different tools and services for example, disabled people. Basically, how local government sees that senior citizens or, for example, blind people, they're not an economic power, despite the fact that they actually are. And they very often venture investors just don't see the sector because they consider that it should be funded by the local governments.
Yeah, and a lot of it is. So, I earn all my income from money I get from local government and grant givers. I don't, the investment I've had for now insignificant in comparison. It's so small, and I've had no success because they don't see the size of the market. It's not sexy, and fundamentally, there are home sharing platforms that are not for profit, and I suppose they kind of want me to be in that. Really honest, they would be more comfortable if I was a not-for-profit, and I probably would be much more, I would find funding much easier if I was. It's being a for-profit business in this space, looking for equity investment is very difficult.
Mm-hmm. And you basically mentioned this thing that the market is not sexy for the investors. And when you are talking to venture funds, we have at one point two representatives of the venture funds here. So considering you have a venture fund. So basically, when you're talking to venture funds about this segment, they're kind of, well, are all the startups, are they kind of charity startups? Is it social entrepreneurship? Is it something like this? And also, for me, this segment looks completely overlooked. And it's not only about the money that this target audience is not spending on the digital services. It's also about very high LTV, actually, lifetime value. Because this audience, they don't tend to kind of change the products. They stick to something. They have huge loyalty to the products that they're using. So basically, when you target some products to some kind of younger audience, who is everyone running after this 25, 35 or something, while they're great economic power, I'll make another product for them, another productivity or dating or something. Startups really often don't think that those guys are not loyal. They take another new they download new app, they use it for some moment and for some time, and then they just delete it and download another one. And with the AgeTech, it's very different because, for example, in cosmetics, because I have a startup in skincare, and in my portfolio. So when you have a startup dedicated to one topic, you kind of know a lot of things, useless things about the industry, but at household panels. So skincare, there were a lot of surveys that companies that are producing skincare, they're really often not targeting the senior audience. Why? Because 60% of the senior audience, more than 60, they're using the products that they started using when they were 20 or 25. And they're still loyal to these products. They're trying to find them somewhere after 40 years, they're still using those products. So, and basically the same with the startups, the same with the apps. So Elena and Frank, as investors, why this this target audience, why startups that are doing something for the target audience are completely overlooked, given the fact that they definitely should have some good financial numbers?
I'm not sure I agree with the statement as a whole, like that's being overlooked and that VCs are not looking at it. So we recently invested in a company that is targeting elder population, but they market to their family members, right? So not as much to aging group, but the family members that are taking care of their elderly family members, parents, grandparents, and so on. So we do realize that it's a huge market and there is a need for solutions. So we, as VC, we invest in this space. And I think that many other VCs invest as well. So of course, it all depends on the company and what they're doing and the value proposition and the market, obviously. I think that already, like our parents, they're a lot more digital than like our grandparents are aware or are. So of course, it's when it comes to like skincare, it's an example, of course. Yeah, that's true. Like I would market this kind of products to family members as well, because the most of the change comes from children and grandchildren that is being pushed up. So that's what I would do if I was creating some a startup. But generally, investments are happening, and a lot more than ever before.
Yeah, saying an investor from United States markets.
I'm saying this because we invest in, we invested in an AgeTech company a couple of months ago. So I'm speaking from experience, yeah.
Yeah. So if it's allowed, I mean, can you tell more about the startup you invested in? And
absolutely, a startup is Sensi AI, and what they're doing is that they're monitoring actually the way caretakers are communicating with the elderly people, and they're monitoring the speech. So it's actually like when a caretaker is speaking rudely or abusing the elderly, it's a huge problem. I mean, seriously. So when there is some abuse, and so this AI is able to recognize it and to communicate it to the management. So it's actually kind of monitoring of caretakers, I would say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's not your first AgeTech investment, so as far as I know, right?
Well, it's our first AgeTech. So we have investments in digital health companies that can be used for both, like for people who had strokes. Yeah, the majority, for example, the majority of people like are a certain age. But then again, it's not only it's not targeting only the aging population.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And was it kind of some sort of I don't know, like management decisions that now we're investing also in this like sector or something? Because if we're looking at, or is it just like, is it the part of your fund mandate? Because when we're looking at the European VCs and when we start saying like AgeTech, they're like, what? It's not in our mandate. We don't invest in things like this.
I mean, it really doesn't matter. So here I would agree with Frank. It really doesn't matter how you call it, whether it's AgeTech or digital health or health tech, or like, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But the thing is that there are a lot of interesting things happening in this space. Like AgeTech may be a part of it. So it's not our decision, like now we will be investing in this, but we're actively monitoring the space. And if we see that there is a company, interesting company, then we'll consider investing, because it's targeting elderly people, their relatives, or just people with chronic conditions. We're monitoring the space, yes.
Yeah, question to Frank. So basically, I thought Germany kind of like is ahead of many countries in terms of venture investments and everything, because as you said, investing as an angel for like 30 something years. So what's happening? Is AgeTech actually like recognized in Germany? Do venture funds invest? Do venture funds look at it as like a new opportunity in terms of target audience, or there is nothing out there?
I wouldn't say there's nothing out there, but they're not specifically looking for AgeTech. It's more a part of what they're focusing at. Most VCs have a very clear investment thesis. And this is usually within an industry or a technological focus. Within that, they're also focusing on AgeTech. But I know very few that are focusing on the topic as an industry itself. And I think maybe that's in Europe and also in Germany related to if you find events related to AgeTech, you often have social startups there. And that is not the target for VCs. Those are startups that want to work with grants, with governments, that want to support social ideas. And of course, VC investors want to see returns. And that's a different space. There are also other investors that want to do something for society, for impact, that are not aiming to earn money, but that's not the VC model. And so you don't find it that much because there is not really that ecosystem for an AgeTech industry that is aiming at making money in that sector. If we had something like that, I think it would change more. So today it's more it's part of different industries of different sectors. So it's more in consideration as a target group, as a wealthy target group that is growing. Also, angels start working more with their startups, showing them that those markets. Yeah, but I wouldn't say at the moment it's really an extra sector, an extra industry.
So basically, from what I hear from you and Suzanne, it's a chicken and an egg problem, because you say so VCs are not out there because those startups that are building something for this target audience, they're mostly like social entrepreneurship or something, and VCs are not investing. And Suzanne is saying like, well, VCs are not investing. So basically, even if we're some sort of like an actual startup, and we're aiming at earning money, there are no money in the market for us, so we have to go to the government and build something which is non-profits. So Suzanne, how do you see this kind of, how do you see how we can overcome this situation, and would the specific ecosystem of AgeTech startups actually help?
I think, as Frank said, VC investment is about return. And so we all have to educate investors. When I was talking to a big VC in New York a while back, he was saying to me, look, I have to be honest, I don't really know anything about this space. I don't know the numbers. I don't really get it. I don't understand it, but I'm open to being educated about it. So if you tell me you've got the numbers, if you tell me the space is big enough, if you show me that you can get to the market, then I'm open to listening to you, right? Not everybody's that open-minded. Some people are just like, I don't know it. I'm not interested. I don't want to talk to you. But I think that there are specific investors now, like Primetime in the States, who are looking specifically at this sector. And I think it's a matter of showing them the numbers. I mean, speaking from a not-for-profit point of view, when I started working with older people around work for nearly 5 years ago, there was not the money there from local government. because the numbers weren't stacking up for them. They were going, you know, there's more interest in refugees. I'm more interested in ex-offenders. I'm more interested in youth. I'm more interested in these other groups that are very clear to me. And I don't see that your group has a significant need to solve. So I'm not interested in talking to you. Then, so the funding wasn't there for me for local government. Then COVID came along and suddenly people started writing reports, government reports about the significance of COVID in relation to over 50s and work. And suddenly I get local government knocking on my door saying, what can I do to support those people back into employment? I have to say that when it comes to the work I do in employment, more people are talking to me and asking why I'm not a for-profit business now, and saying there's a massive opportunity for you here in this space with retraining older people into all sorts of work, whether it's self-employment or digital skills or other forms of training. They're asking me, you know, would you like money? Is there something we can do? And I was like, really, because I'm not an equity investment business. So, but I find it quite funny that my not-for-profit now is attracting more. I did actually have a chat with a VC kind of business. They do loans as well, about the training business, and they just said, well, how much money do you want? What do you need? And I said, I don't really need anything, if I'm really honest. I mean, I'm kind of okay, but I'm more interested in you know, in the kind of funding that I've been getting. I don't really want the brain damage of VC investment right now. So, but I just want to talk to you to kind of see if you can help us a bit, get the word out. So I do think it's interesting that as a result of big numbers, people just respond to big numbers. Let's just put it that way. They just respond to big numbers. And if you show them that the numbers are big enough and the need of the problem is big enough, like everything else, then they stand up and they take notice. But I think it's it's just that we don't really have, getting the data is difficult. It's hard, you know. So therefore it's hard to justify the need and the number that you're asking for.
Yeah, and there is also some sort of a bias, because when I'm talking to the investors in venture funds or angel investors, and when I mention like senior tech or AgeTech, they're kind of like, okay, so kind of this is some sort of a medtech, right? So it's like for caring or something like this. And we know the medtech industry and biotech industry. We probably don't invest in medtech and biotech. And I'm like, well, you know, it's not only about caring. There is this whole sector out there. And then they're kind of, but who's paying? You know, probably these people don't have money. And also it's the same with the kind of AgeTech startups. So if the founders are 30, 35, like 40, they kind of start treating senior people as people who need to be taken care of. When the founders are kind of more mature, so to say, and they're closer to their target audience that they're treating. A lot of interesting products are out there, but there is another problem of venture funds investing in this, 35 male white founders as an like ideal type of founder. So what about founders who are, so let's say, a little bit unconventional, founders who are 60, founders who are 65. What do you think as venture funds? I mean, would you invest in a startup where one of the founders is 60 to 65 and they're doing AgeTech? Probably start with Elena.
Honestly, if we invest less in founders 65 plus, it's because they don't pitch us. I hardly meet any founders 65 plus. So it's not because we want to invest in like a young male 35, and there is also a reason why it's happening, because there are less of other founders that pitch us. It's like we never look at it like the way you just mentioned, like, oh, this this founder doesn't fit our profile. We never do this. But the majority of founders that pitch us fit the profiles that you just mentioned.
Frank?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Most of the pitches are by the young audience. It's the same with other diverse groups. You don't see them that much. I had in my 30 years a few really aged founders, and we also invested in some, but they were in a mixed startup team. I had 2 founders where I really didn't do it. They had good or even great ideas, but they were solo founders, which is a problem itself. I don't invest in solo founders. Plus, then both of them were already retired and in their 70s. And they wanted to stay solo founders. And I said, that's not investable, because the risk for the investor is dramatically high. I mean, if you have a solo founder, it's already a problem. But if you have a solo founder 70 plus, there's a high risk that they get really sick. And then there is nobody that can take over that startup, that idea. So it would be just going down by any accident or something like this. So that's just not investable. But I really like if there's a startup team, if you have one experienced person there, especially if he knows about the market and if he has connections in the market, that's much better than only having young people in a team.
Yeah, probably. I mean, probably this is the part of the problem, because those founders who are building the products for the silver tech, it's either some rare types of founders, because normally the founders are not interested in the problem of the older generation. I mean, how would the typical founder look? This person is like coming to you and telling you, okay, I have this idea because I had this problem myself, and this is what I'm gonna do. This is how I'm gonna change the world and everything, and become a unicorn. But if we look at their age group, like typical, I mean, like 30, 35 or something, they're not experiencing the same problem as older people. And probably this is why they don't build any AgeTech, because they just know nothing about it. Suzanne, I know that you talked to some silver tech startup founders. So what's your take on it?
I suspect there's I'm always curious to know whether it's the responsibility of VCs to create more diversity in their portfolio, or it's the responsibility of the founders to seek out these VCs and make them aware of their startup. I suspect that it's a bit of a mix of both. And I am always a bit dismayed when I hear people say, well, I just can't find them, or they don't come to me, or I don't know about them. Because surely the responsibility of a VC is to find them, as to try and encourage diversity. And I think it's kind of lazy because we all know that access to capital and networks are the 2 things that create growth, right, in business. If you don't have networks and you don't have access to capital, then you're going to struggle. And people of color, women, older people, etc., they these 2 things generally. So, being I'm like a networker extraordinaire, as everybody knows, and I spend probably 80% of my time just building relationships with people, because I recognize the value in that, but also because I have a background in PR and communication. And so it's in my blood, this is what I do. But it's not so easy for a lot of people. there are great products out there that are being created by all sorts of people. And I do think it's the responsibility partly of the ecosystem to find them. And not to just say, well, the only people that come to us are white young men. And so that's why we invest in them. Okay.
Yeah, Frank, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I can agree and disagree. I'm doing that for 30 years now, and I'm really going, as some know here, to almost all events. I'm connected to women founders, to Black founders, to all kind of diverse groups, and I'm really reaching out, and it's still hard to find those promising teams there. I'm very engaged, like with Women for Tech, and not only women in tech, also in Germany, I'm supporting to get more women also in corporate companies in the management. But the first thing that counts in the corporate, or if you invest in companies and then you invest in persons, is that they have the right fit, the qualification, that they're the real good ones. And if I want to invest in a team, I need real entrepreneurs. And then I don't care in the first side, is it a woman, a man, whatever. I want the best team, the best entrepreneur. And even if I try to be diverse and to put more money into women and into colored founders and immigrant founders or whatever, it's hard to find good ones. There are many people there in that scene speaking out loud, you have to invest in me because I am. But then if you look behind that, you see, okay, the quality is missing. And I'm not going to invest in you because you are a woman, you are Black or whatever. If this comes together and it's equal to the young white man, yes, why not? And I don't care about gender. I don't care about your background. I want to see the best opportunity to invest in. And yes, it for a part of the money, it's a problem because they're very close in their investment topics, themes. So they only go to very small vertical in their industry to certain events. And a lot of people don't have really access to that events. So it's kind of a closed circle. But there are lots of opportunities where there are today so many open circles, open ecosystems where you can go to. So there I have to disagree because I know lots of VCs. I'm connected to so many European VCs, and I know they're looking, they're searching, and it's still not easy.
How much of that do you think, though, is based upon, because I have to go in about a minute, is based upon the fact that understanding the vernacular of the VC world takes time, just as understanding the vernacular profit world takes time? I mean, I'm only successful now in getting grants in not-for-profit because I've been doing it for 5 years now. I'm successful at the beginning because I didn't understand the language of that space. I didn't understand the terminology, the words that are the door openers, right? That make people give you money. And similarly, in the VC space, it's taken me a while to understand that, no, probably, you know what, my current business is not a real VC investment. It's not going to hit those massive numbers that they're looking for. And I understand that now. It's okay. You know, I have the conversations and I'm okay about it. But it did take me quite a while to understand what are the numbers that I need to be able to get to, realistically get to. What is the vernacular I need to use when I'm speaking to these people about how I'm going to achieve growth, what that's going to look like, Mike, all those kind of key points, right? It's taken me years to learn that. And that's because I don't have an MBA. I didn't go to those schools. I didn't grow up in those networks. And so I had to almost have that education organically, right? And I suspect that's the same for many people of color, women, etc. They might have a great business, but they don't know how to articulate it. So what you're hearing is, I am not great business. That's what you're hearing, and I get that, because they don't understand how to articulate that for people like you.
So basically, we're coming back to the ecosystem. We are coming back to kind of growing the silver tech founders, different founders, so like female founders and everything. We're coming back to educating them, making them stronger, giving them some sort of like the language that they need, the understanding that they need. Yes, if you look at the market, there are a lot of kind of leadership program for female founders. But the thing is, probably they don't need leadership. Probably they just need some knowledge or something like this. And the same goes with silver tech and everything.
You know, I just wanted to add that like there are a lot of changes here happening, and I'm proud to say that in our fund, like VC, there are more women than men in our team. So that's you know, you don't see that a lot in VC world. So like and the last the companies that I mentioned in AgeTech that we invested in a couple of months ago, this is a team was led by women only. So like but I have to agree with Frank here. You know, like I'm attending a lot of events. I try to help women any way I can, but we will not make a call on investment based on, you know, like it still needs to be a good investable company and the team, of course.
Yeah, that's very true. So basically, what are the conclusions here? So there is, so AgeTech is definitely vertical and market, whatever, like it's definitely something that is developing and that is out there. We need probably more education, more ecosystem, more things like here to bring it at the end of the day to the investors, and we kind of need more venture funding in this space, I think. So thanks everyone, and it was really great to start the morning with you from this lovely discussion, and sorry for the technical inconvenience at the very beginning. And I hope to see you during our next panel or later. So stay safe and let's stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.